Hey, real progressives, this is Jackie Luqman. And as promised yesterday, I wanted to talk to you today about the comments that Dr. Jill Stein's VP running mate has a selection, Dr. Ajamu Baraka, has made about Bernie Sanders and his supporters that has a lot of Sanders supporters really upset. I'm going to start this discussion with this disclaimer. I always feel like I have to start my discussions with a disclaimer. This is not going to be an easy discussion to have. You're probably not going to like some of the things I have to say, some of you progressives, because you didn't like what Dr. Baraka had to say. So, and this is not really an easy subject to just sit down and kind of just have a breezy discussion about. But it's a discussion we need to have if we're really serious about changing this two-party system we have in this country that is not representing not just the will of the average American person well, but is also wreaking all kinds of havoc around the world. And that's the focal point of Dr. Baraka's comments. All right. So let me start with one of the sources that reported the story on his comments. And I'm going to start by saying this. I believe half of what even independent media reports. I will be honest and tell you that when I heard about his comments and read what other people reported that he said as a Sanders supporter, I was so upset. I was like, dude, how could you say such a thing? How could you talk about us like that? And how could you say these evil things about us? And then I had to do what I always kind of preach to other people that they should do, and that is to stop, take a step back, go to the source of the comments and read what was actually said and understand the context in which it was said. And those things are extremely important when it comes to this discussion about these particular comments. Why is that? Because what is being reported that Dr. Baraka said, especially by one of the sources, it's Wonkette. Now I have to tell you, I don't ever read Wonkette. I don't get news from people who are insiders in Washington who created a blog and then they started getting paid to report on the dirt that goes on behind the scenes. That's kind of who Wonkette is. That's how Wonkette came about. And there is a decided bias in some of the reporting that comes out of this outlet. So I take this information with a grain of salt. So but this is one of the sites that was cited. So I'm going to use it because I want to give you the context in which the comments have been reported. So, first of all, the first problem I have with the way this man's comments are reported is that people, Wonkette and I think Vox have compared Dr. Baraka's criticism of Bernie Sanders and his supporters on some issues with his criticism of Beyonce's Super Bowl performance in the last Super Bowl with the whole Black Panther theme. And okay, first of all, to compare political policy to an entertainer's performance and lumping them all together and to make the suggestion that, well, this is why I don't like you because you criticize Bernie Sanders and you criticize Beyonce. So basically, members of the Bayhive came out to bash this guy because he criticized Beyonce. Guess what? I don't like Beyonce. I've never liked Beyonce. And it's wonderful that she stood up for the Black Lives Matter movement and is making political and really social statements with her music. That's great, but it sure took her long enough, because I come from a generation where that's what entertainers and musicians did. Most of them. I come from a generation where every song that we listened to in the 60s and 70s was a protest song. So yay, Beyonce got her Black Panther iconography down. Woohoo! Okay, so let me go on to this Wonkette thing, where they reference some comments that Dr. Ajamu Baraka has made in his own personal blog. And the comments came from a blog that he wrote on September 16th of 2015. So he made these comments last year. And it is worth pointing out, by the way, that Dr. Baraka has always been a Green Party supporter. So while those of us who were weirded out about the Green Party because they're so fringe and how can they get support, because y'all know some of y'all were talking about the Green Party like that before y'all got on the Jill, the Jill not Hill bandwagon. Y'all know some of y'all had written the Green Party off as a bunch of crazy tree-hugging environmentalists that nobody would listen to. Dr. Baraka has always been a third-party Green Party, anybody but the Democrats and Republican supporter. Always. So I got to give him props for that. The point of Dr. Baraka's criticism of Bernie Sanders and some of his supporters was focused around Bernie Sanders' support of continuing the drone wars. Let me just start right there, clear that up. What Wonkette says in this piece, they try to paint this picture that Dr. Baraka is trying to paint Sanders and his supporters as a bunch of racists who are just going to continue to do the evil racist bidding of the Democratic Party. That is not just an over gross, over ridiculous elementary school simplification of the issues Dr. Baraka brought up, but it's actually a lie. It's actually just a flat out lie, because that's not what he said. What Wonkette says in this piece, and this is the only paragraph I'm going to read from this piece of garbage, is that, in short, said Baraka in the September 2005 piece, a President Bernie Sanders would simply be yet another imperialist warmonger who'd support, quote, continued war crimes from the sky with drone strikes and Saudi-led terror in support of the Western Imperial Project, end quote. And these are Wonkette's words, or the writer of this article's words. And his supporters are, at best, willfully blind to Sanders' own racist warmongering. And then this person goes on to quote something from what Dr. Baraka actually wrote. That sounds bad, right? That sounds like Sanders' supporters are a bunch of racists, and so is Sanders, and that's what Dr. Baraka was saying. But when you go to the actual blog post, he has a blog, and it's still up, so it's not anything he's ashamed of or is backtracking on, and I don't blame him for not backtracking on it either. When you read what he actually wrote in context, you come away with a different understanding of what he was saying. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to read you some of the things he actually wrote. So it is in a blog that he wrote on September 16th, 2015, and it is entitled "The Yemen Tragedy and the Ongoing Crisis of the Left in the United States." That's what the blog is about. The airstrikes in Yemen that were killing innocent people, that the United States was behind, that the United States supported and orchestrated, killing innocent Yemenis, killing people at weddings, killing children. This is the imperialist policy of the American left. We're not talking about the warmongering Republicans now, because it's not a warmongering Republican who has ramped up the drone war that's causing this destruction. It's a warmongering Democrat. And if you remember just from last week, that last night of the Democratic National Convention, that I swear that looked to me like a Republican convention with these people and shouting down Sanders supporters who were chanting "No more war" and drowning out those people's chants with "USA, USA, USA." It's that kind of nationalistic attitude that, and this is where people's feelings are going to get hurt, and you're not going to like what I have to say, but I'm trying to explain to you the perspective that Dr. Baraka is coming from, and the perspective of a lot of Black people who had a hard time supporting Bernie Sanders. This nativist, nationalistic attitude that comes from not conservative Republicans, but the liberal white left, that overlooks the dangerous and deadly foreign policy that's been advanced by the current Democratic administration. That's the problem that Dr. Baraka was talking about. Like I said, this is not an easy conversation to have because there's a lot to parse out. But I'm trying my best and I'm hoping you get it. Sunday Dascalia, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Forgive me if I didn't, said, can't stand Beyonce. She rode the Black Panther symbolism, but is not about the people. F her. I kind of agree with that. So, okay. What Dr. Baraka is really talking about is the fact that white liberals have not recognized that their party has been pushed so far from its core of being pro-people that those who hold the power in the party, the white liberals basically are saying, you know what? Foreign lives are not as valuable as American lives. So we don't care how many innocent people drone strikes kill. That's the easiest way I can explain what his perspective without getting all crazy with the fancy words and all that kind of stuff. I understand that you may not agree with that. But from someone who has been a human rights activist and has sat on the board of Amnesty International, Stephanie Gabinet Bethel says, I don't think it's just white liberals. Okay, let me try to explain this in a way that doesn't put people off. When we say it is white liberals who do this, or it is white people who do that, and it is white supremacy, we're not talking about every single white person. We understand that there are Black people who are operating inside of this apparatus who also advance these ideas. But the construct of power was created and advanced by white people. The prison industrial complex wasn't built by Black people. The concept of white supremacy and the global extension of white supremacy, that is colonialism and imperialism, is based on the idea that white or European ideals, thought, culture, and lives are more valuable than people who do not fit within those constructs. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So listen, my white liberal brothers and sisters, I'm not saying you're all racist and evil and want to kill all non-white people, and neither is Dr. Baraka. All right. He is talking about a system, a construct, a set of ideals on which policy is based that values some lives more than it values other lives. And it shows that in the lives that people are willing to sacrifice for the preservation of other lives. I hope I'm explaining that okay. All right. So let me continue on with what he said. And I encourage you to go to his blog, his website. It's just Google Dr. Ajamu Baraka, Ajamu Baraka. Read his blog for yourself. I'm warning you, it's dense. He is a PhD. He likes big words and complex sentences. It's not easy stuff to read. But if you take the time to invest in learning what he has to say, I think it would be very valuable to you. All right, so here's what he says in his own words. And while U.S. propagandists are preparing the people for an even more direct intervention into Syria, using the absurd pretext that somehow the imposition of a no-fly zone is an appropriate response to the humanitarian concerns of refugee flows from Syria to Europe, the humanitarian emergency created by the war in Yemen is largely uncovered and outside the bounds of polite conversation in the United States. This conspiracy of silence has translated into impunity for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Remember, this is a man who served on the board of Amnesty International. He's seen things that have been the result of U.S. drone wars that we are now just sort of getting a glimpse of through social media videos. He's seen these things for years. And before the advent of these social media outlets that share these videos, Americans didn't know these things happened. So this is the conspiracy of silence he's talking about. Our media wasn't telling us about the death toll of innocent people and babies and bystanders and wedding parties that our drones were killing. Our media wasn't telling us those things. And even though we understand the concept of collateral damage, and we see this surge in refugee exoduses from these countries that are the targets of these drone wars, we don't put two and two together in our own minds and say, well, wait, why are these people running away from these places instead of staying and fighting for their homes like we would do? Well, how do you fight against a drone? That's the conspiracy of silence he's talking about here. He goes on to say it means that it has meant that the central role played by the United States in this criminal assault occurred without any opposition from mainstream politicians or most radicals and leftists in the United States. So Dr. Baraka is not just hating on Bernie Sanders here. He's not just hating on Sanders supporters here. He's talking about everybody who should have been outraged at the drone wars and the disasters that they really have been in the United States who weren't, because we're much more comfortable with our own manufactured existence than we are in facing the horrors that we contribute to creating around the world. As long as we're comfortable, we pretty much don't care what happens to other people in other countries. That's it in a nutshell. I understand you may not agree with that, but for people in other countries who get bombs dropped on them from U.S. drones, explain to them how that's not true. So then here is the part in what he has to say about where these comments come from. He says, do non-European lives really matter to white leftists? This is something I feel like I have to really, really explain. And this is part of the reason one of the reasons I believe a lot of Black people could not bring themselves to support Bernie Sanders. There were other reasons, class being one of those reasons. You've got, middle-class Black people who look down on poor Black people just like, racist white people do. That's very true. You've got Black people who are not politically astute, and they just do what the media tells them to do. That's most Americans, sadly. But then you have a segment of politically and socially and culturally aware Black people who have been revolutionaries for a long time, and they have always seen the system of government in the United States as the political wing of the white supremacist system that this country was built on. So they look at candidates who run in either one of the major political parties as non-options for them. Not because the candidates are bad people, but because they believe that no good person can affect any change within a system that was set up to oppress people. Because we've now come to understand, at least I hope we've now come to understand, that the Democratic Party is just a different wing of the same bird. The Republican Party is just the other wing. It's the same stinking, crappy, imperialistic, oligarchical, I don't know if that's a word, but I like it, oligarchical, oppressive bird. There are those people who have been revolutionaries for a long time, and that's not just Black people either, who have always seen American politics that way. So when Bernie Sanders ran and he extolled the virtues of this wonderful domestic platform that was great on paper, when he decided to run as a Democrat, that lost a lot of revolutionaries, Black and white. And I have to say, since we've been having this conversation after the Democratic National Convention has ended and Sanders has gone back to being an independent, and people have decided to vote for Hillary Clinton. Some Sanders supporters have decided to vote for Hillary Clinton because she's less scary than Trump. We are now having this conversation, those of us who are Bernie or bust, those of us who are Jill not Hill, we're now having this conversation that some revolutionaries have been having for 30, 40, 50 years. That the Democratic Party doesn't represent the people. We can't reform it, so let's not. So let's just build our power from a party outside of the system and burn that sucker down. Do you understand what I mean? So this lack of focusing on the global reach of neoliberal policies that have grown and flourished within the Democratic Party, and how these neoliberal / colonialist / imperialist policies have destroyed the lives of vulnerable Black and brown and other groups of people around the world has been ignored by some, not all, but some Sanders supporters throughout this campaign. That's what Dr. Baraka is talking about. All right. So Stephanie Gabinet says, yes, she is more scary. You're right. Hillary Clinton is more scary. So let me go back to what he says. I don't want to give too much of my commentary because what he has to say is much more important. He explains it better than I do. He just uses bigger and better words, I think. He says the political reaction to the killing spree in Yemen that now eclipses the murderous assault on Gaza by Israel has not only been met with indifference, but many leftists and radicals in the U.S. have given their support to Bernie Sanders, who said very clearly that under his administration, the Saudis would be given even more latitude to carry out military operations in the Middle East. The Sanders position is that the Saudis need to get their, quote, hands a little dirty, unquote, For Bernie and his supporters, the mischief that the Saudi government and private individuals have been engaged in across the region, financing groups like ISIS, wasn't dirty enough. All right. And I understand that this is the part where many Sanders supporters really have a hard time with what this man had to say, because he's criticizing some of what Bernie Sanders has actually said. As someone who is a Pan-Africanist, and Pan-Africanist just means that as an African American, I don't just believe in the fight for equality and justice for African Americans in this country. I recognize it as an extension of the fight for equality and justice for Africans and people in the diaspora of Africans around the world, simultaneously. So, Black Lives Matter isn't just an American Black Lives Matter thing. It's a Black Lives Matter thing in Rio, in Brazil. It's why I can't watch the Olympics. It's why I'm not excited about them, because I know that the Brazilian government destroyed poor Afro-Brazilian neighborhoods and shipped those people off to the hinterland somewhere so that they could build these multi-billion-dollar facilities that those poor Afro-Brazilians will never have access to. That is the Pan-Africanist view of the Black struggle. It's not just in the United States. It's not just here. And I know some of you are posting the shocked face and you didn't know that, because our media doesn't talk about that. That's why we're here. So what Dr. Baraka is talking about is the fact that we American liberals, we American leftists, we American radicals, we American Sanders supporters aren't talking about these issues that affect vulnerable people around the world. And that's a problem. We say what the media tells us to say about the Saudis getting more involved in the fight against ISIS, but because we don't take the time to educate ourselves on the fact that it's the Saudis who are funding ISIS. So why would I support that? It's this kind of lack of information that there was an article that was floating around that I know we posted several times about the danger of anti-intellectualism in the United States. This is the kind of thing that causes, where we have support for an idea, but we don't understand the intricacies of the details in the idea, and we don't pay any attention to the global reach of someone's policy position. All right. So as much as I support Bernie Sanders, and I didn't like his statements about giving Saudi Arabia more support. I know they're guilty and complicit in ISIS. I know they're guilty and complicit in the suppression and the oppression of women's rights. I know that. I don't want to support them anymore. And let's remember that Bernie Sanders had to be pushed on how he felt about Palestinian rights publicly. I'm not saying that he wasn't a supporter of Palestinian rights, but in order to, I guess, make people comfortable that he wasn't just a blanket supporter of Israel and all of their evil against Palestinians, Bernie Sanders had to be really pushed to say publicly, no, I believe in a two-state solution, and I believe that the Palestinians have the right to self-determination and self-governance. And yes, I do believe that the Israeli government goes too far, too frequently, in the way they deal with or respond to the Palestinians. As a Pan-Africanist who has known about the racism, the bigotry, and the hatred that has shaped so much of the Israeli response to the Palestinians and to African Jews, Ethiopian Jews in Israel, you don't even know about that. because nobody talks about how Ethiopian Jews in Israel are subjected to unconscionable racism. Well, not unconscionable, same kind of crap we experience here. Only nobody talks about it. So as a Pan-Africanist, I've always been upset with American politicians who toe the I support Israel party line. In the Democratic Party, again, remember, I'm not even talking about Republicans. I know who they are. Republicans have made it clear who they are. I am disturbed by the Democratic Party, who couches their positions on these critical issues that affect people around the world in party dogma, in talking points, in feel-good jingoism. Yes, Israel deserves the right to defend itself. Well, that's great and fine. So do I. But I don't have the right to go and blow up 15 people's houses because somebody throws a rock at mine. So, white and black, but those who have the power in the Democratic Party, who do not talk about these issues, not just when it comes to Sanders, but when it comes to Obama, when it comes to any Democrat, that's the problem he's talking about. So he goes on to say, and this is where I said, remember I said that this Wonkette assertion that Sanders and his supporters, that Dr. Baraka was saying that Sanders and his supporters are at best willfully blind to Sanders' own racist warmongering. Dr. Baraka says in his own blog, in the same blog, quote, "This is not to suggest that everyone who might find a way to support Sanders is a closet racist and supporter of imperialism." Let me read that again. This is not to suggest that everyone who might find a way to support Sanders is a closet racist and supporter of imperialism. He says himself, I'm not saying that Sanders supporters are racist. I'm not saying that they all support imperialism. That's not what I'm saying. He goes on to say, I know plenty of folks of all backgrounds who, quote, feel the burn, end quote. There is, however, an objective logic to their uncritical support that they cannot escape, in which I believe represents the ongoing crisis of radicalism in the U.S. and Europe. Sorry, y'all. Someone always seems to want to call and talk to me when I am talking to you. I don't know if that's because I'm more popular than I've ever been and I wish I were this popular in high school, or if, I don't know, we're doing some stuff here and people are trying to shut us up. I am hoping that it's the latter and that you don't let them. So Dr. Baraka is not saying that Sanders supporters are a bunch of racists, that we're a bunch of imperialists. What he is saying is exactly what I said to you yesterday, that we have to be able to critique, to critically examine, to question our politicians. And too many Sanders supporters have not done that on these issues of foreign policy, Sanders' positions on foreign policy, and their global impact. Why is that important? Dr. Baraka says the Sanders campaign, like the Obama phenomenon before it, does not offer a program or strategic direction for addressing the current crisis and contradictions of Western capitalist societies. Instead, it is an expression of the moral and political crisis of the Western radicalism. In their desperate attempt to defend Sanders and paint his critics as dogmatists and purists, the Sanders supporters have not only fallen into the ideological trap of a form of narrow, quote, left, unquote, nativism, but also the white supremacist ethical contradiction that reinforces racist cynicism in which some lives are disposable for the greater good of the West. What did I just tell you like 5 minutes ago? That's what he said. So when we have said to people who criticize Bernie Sanders, and by we, I do mean Sanders supporters, when we've said to people that they can't critique Sanders because they're looking for a pure and perfect candidate and they're being dogmatic and ideological and, they're looking for perfection. And we have, in looking over and ignoring these issues of foreign policy and their reach and the destruction that they have wreaked on people across the globe, what we Sanders supporters, some of us who have engaged in that have done, is that we've become the thing that we've criticized, in a way, by omission. I guess that's the best way to describe it. We're telling people, you can't criticize Bernie Sanders because of anything. You can't say anything bad about him. And we are ignoring the damage that some of the policies that he said he supports will do. Now, to be clear, because I don't like just presenting one or two aspects of a discussion. Because like I said, this is not an easy conversation to have. It's not a quick one. I'm sorry. Not a quick one. It's not a tea and snacks kind of conversation. It's complex. So what I want to do is read to you what Bernie Sanders actually said about his support of the drone program, because he did say he was going to continue it. In an interview on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, that guy with the funny name on ABC News, Sanders indicated that he would limit the use of drones so that they do not end up killing innocent people abroad, but to decline to say that he would end the targeted killing campaign completely. Sanders said, "I think we have to use drones very, very selectively and effectively. That has not always been the case. What you can argue is that there are times and places where drone attacks have been effective. There are times and places where they have been absolutely counter-effective and has caused more problems than they have solved. When you kill innocent people, what the end result is that people in the region become anti-American who otherwise would not have been." That is what Bernie Sanders said. And when he said it, I know, Sunday, I'm so sorry. I've been on 3 conference calls for my regular job today already, so I'm a little bit tongue-tied. Stephanopoulos. There you go. I did it. I'm sorry. So when Sanders made this comment, I was glad that he made the distinction that he did, that our drone program does kill far more innocent people than we admit. And we don't like admitting that. And at least he admitted that. I was glad of that. I was not happy that he did not say he would end the drone program. So this is the thing. This is the thing that a lot of leftists, whether white or black, radicals, and a lot of black nationalists and pro-black and Pan-African people have always had a problem with in regard to Sanders' campaign. The fact that he had to be pushed by Black Lives Matter here in the United States to make racial justice in this country a focal point of his platform, not saying that he didn't think it was important, because I believe that he does, but that he kind of had to be reminded that we're at a time in this country now where we can't continue to wait. We're beyond waiting now. We're not going to sit back and wait for the Democratic Party or anybody else to do right by us. We're not going to continue to politely wait our turn. We need our issues addressed right now. And what are you going to do to address them? We're at that time now in this country. But it's also true that there are people in other countries who have been at that point because of U.S.-led foreign policy. And they're wondering, what are you going to do about this death that you've been raining down on us? And because we don't talk about the fact that these problems exist And we don't want to answer these people's questions because the only thing we are concerned about are domestic policies that make our lives better here. That's what people have a problem with. In defending sort of the continuing the drone program, I think at one point Bernie Sanders used Obama's phrase, "the perfect is the enemy of the good." That's great when you're talking about policy, like a jobs policy, like a jobs program. That's great when you're talking about like the Affordable Care Act. Okay, you got to do something now that you can improve on later. You know, so we shouldn't shoot for perfect right now. We should do good. If we can't get exactly what I can buy that argument a little bit, not entirely, when we're talking about stuff like that. But when we're talking about bombing people and wedding parties, when we're talking about bombing children and killing innocent people with the perfect is the enemy of the good doesn't cut it. Doesn't cut it. Let me wrap this up because I've been talking a long time. And I don't want y'all to get bored and disconnect and go, oh my God, that girl from Real Progressives just will not stop beating me over the head. Let me see. Let me find this. Oh yeah. Okay. This is something that I really think encapsulates very well. See, I've been talking too much. Now I'm getting grammatically all messy. Very well, Dr. Baraka's point, his idea, what he means to say. What this means for those of us who are internationalists. Most Americans, even most of us American political junkies, are not internationalists. We are nativists. We are nationalists. We only care about what policy means to Americans. We don't think about the global reach of our policy, and we're conditioned to think that way. We're conditioned to think that way from probably the cradle. America is the greatest nation in the world. You know, manifest destiny. God intended for America to be great, so God just created these other countries because he was bored, and I don't know, he pooped them out. That's just ridiculous. We are conditioned to believe that the only country that matters is America, is the United States of America. We are conditioned to believe that the only ideas, the only policies, the only perspective and opinion that matters is that of the American population. And that is very dangerous to other people in other parts of the world. Our drone program kind of proves that. So, okay, he says what this means for those of us who are internationalists and believe in the equal value of life, of all life, is that we have to question the sincerity of individuals who claim that, and this is the key and the kicker, that Black lives matter while supporting someone who clearly believes that Israeli lives matter more than Palestinian and Yemeni lives, and that the pro-democracy fighters in Bahrain should be subjected to the policing and murderous assault by the gangster regime of Saudi Arabia. This is one of the reasons we had a hard time getting a lot of older Black revolutionaries and even the younger ones who are very well aware of our really destructive and deadly foreign policy decisions in places like Libya and Syria and Haiti. Sanders didn't have anything to do with Haiti. But these drone wars, yeah, he's going to continue them. What does that mean for those Black lives over there, for those brown lives over there? You mean to tell me you don't care about those Black lives and those brown lives? So how can you tell me that you care about Black lives here when you don't care about Black and brown lives there? I'm just explaining to you the position. You don't have to agree with it. I suspect that many of you will not. Somebody commented on my stream yesterday saying, oh, I was with you until you started talking about that racist shit. And sorry about the cussing, but that's what he said when I started talking about Black Lives Matter. And I responded to him, well, you know, if you believe that me talking about fighting for equality and justice for Black people in this country within a system of white supremacy that still punishes us for being Black disproportionately, more harshly than other people for any other reason, if you think that's racist, then you're right. This is not the place for you, because I'm not going to stop talking about that. And if we are going to succeed as liberals, as progressives, as leftists, as revolutionaries, we should not seek to squelch the conversation of anybody's fight in this movement. We can't sit here and say, oh, I don't want to sit here and listen to the native people talk about their problems with the 300 treaties this country broke with them. You didn't even know that, did you? Until I just told you. That's why we have to have these conversations, because a lot of people do not know how the governing arm of the system of white supremacy has served to continue to disenfranchise and marginalize vulnerable groups of people. And that doesn't mean that white people haven't been screwed over too. Yes, you have been. That's why you're here. That's why you were Sandinistas. And he, by the way, he did use the term the word Sandinista, but as a revolutionary, I actually kind of like that term, and I've heard plenty Sanders supporters call themselves Sandinistas. Okay, so you can disagree with him using that term. That's fine. But yeah, absolutely, white people are being screwed in this country by this two-party system that is anti-human, anti-people, anti-human rights, anti-human dignity, anti-workers' rights. That's Democrats and Republicans. And yes, let's be real honest, Sanders supporters. Some of y'all were real upset when Sanders ran as a Democrat. And some of y'all were really relieved when he left the Democratic Party. Some of y'all were really upset when Sanders supporters said, okay, I'd rather support the Democratic nominee than the Republican nominee, simply because the Democratic nominee is better than the crazy Republican. This is the kind of stuff he's talking about. Either we are fighting for better policies for all people, or all we are continuing to do is buy in to the dogma of a political party that is just as anti-person as the guys we are told we have to be afraid of. What is revolutionary in continuing to support a political party that crushes revolution? The Democratic Party does not allow dissent within its own party. And I know that Bernie Sanders did a lot of work, and Sanders supporters and delegates did a lot of work getting this progressive platform in the Democratic Party. I've seen the Democrats lie enough to feel like they're really not going to do anything. It's a platform. That doesn't, in my mind, take away from Bernie Sanders and what he did. He believes he can work within the system. Maybe it was his last. I don't want to guess. I don't want to guess what's in somebody else's head. All I know is I have a great deal of respect for what Bernie Sanders did, because he felt like he had to do it, and he felt like he had to do it that way. I just know that as soon as he said, I am going to support the Democratic nominee, I was out. Because I'm a revolutionary who doesn't believe in the Democratic Party and its inherent goodness. I don't. We've seen that. People thought, and I encourage you to read Dr. Baraka's previous blog from this one, the one that he wrote on September 9th, where he criticizes Dr. Cornel West, asking him why would he go back and support another candidate who's running as a Democrat when the last guy he stumped for, who was a Democrat, who he thought was going to change the party, didn't do it. Who is that guy? Barack Obama. That's another reason why a lot of black people weren't feeling Bernie Sanders, because he ran as a Democrat, and we've been burned by Obama under the Democratic Party. I've said a whole lot today. Oh my God, I've said a whole lot today. This was a really complex topic to parse out. And I hope I kind of did it some kind of justice that made some kind of sense to people. I am not at all telling people that you shouldn't have supported Sanders. I'm not telling people that you shouldn't respect it. Absolutely respect the heck out of this man. Yes, absolutely. What we are saying as people who believe that the Democratic Party is just the opposite wing of the same bird is that you cannot get real change in this system by supporting the system as it exists. That's why Dr. Baraka has always been, since the beginning of this campaign, a supporter of Dr. Jill Stein. Thank you so much for sticking in there and listening. I'm sorry I didn't get to as many as the comments. Sunday Daskalea said, I never come here from beginning, so I always miss your name. My name is Jacqueline Luqman, and I am just one member of the Real Progressives editors team. There are 24 of us on this team. Even though you only see a couple of faces on live streams, we have people who write content for our page. We are people who are tech people. We have people who find the information to share with you. I am just one person on this team that I am really, really proud to be on. I hope you are really, really glad to be here. Stick around with Real Progressives because we are growing and we've got some great stuff coming up that we're going to announce to you soon. And just keep fighting. Keep fighting, Real Progressives. Keep fighting for progressive policies. And do not be afraid to critically question whichever candidate pushes and espouses those policies. They're politicians. They're people in the public arena. If they can't stand up to some criticism and scrutiny from the people who support them, they don't deserve our support. That's my thinking on the issue. Thanks a lot, Real Progressives. We'll see you soon.